Some More Outdoor, Episode 12.
Welcome to Some More Outdoor, where we speak with authors, entrepreneurs, and business owners about how the outdoors has affected their life and their projects. This show is to remind you of the healing properties of the outdoors. So, are you ready to learn what the nature effect can do for your life? Well, here's your host, Brett Trout.
Hey gang, before we get started with this episode today, I recorded it a few months ago and we weren't really sure when my guest book was actually going to be launching, but it actually launches today. So my special guest is Jonathan Milligan. He's a blogger at Blogging Your Passion and jonathanmilligan.com. We'll introduce him in a moment, but he's actually doing something awesome for you guys today. Over on Amazon is his new book called 15 Successful Traits of Pro Bloggers. He's been working on this for quite some time now, but it's going to be free in the Kindle store. So that's 15 Successful Traits of Pro Bloggers. It's free today, February 4th through February 9th. And then after the first 5 days, it's going to go up to its normal price. So head on over there. Pick that up for free. Man, if you're a blogger or if you're thinking about blogging or doing anything online, go ahead because the success traits are awesome. So anyways, without further ado, here's the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Some More Outdoor. I'm your host, Brett Trout, and this is the podcast dedicated to reminding you to get out and experience the nature effect. My goal is to help you reestablish your connection with nature so you can live with childlike wonder again. So welcome again to the show. I'm so excited to be here. I have a very special guest and mentor of mine, Jonathan Milligan. How are you doing today, Jonathan?
Hey, I'm doing great, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on today. Jonathan Milligan is an author, blogger, speaker, and career coach. He spent the last decade counseling, guiding, and directing career professionals on how to pursue meaningful work. Since 2009, Jonathan has been building a portable lifestyle business through blogging. Today, he teaches others the roadmap to doing the same. So, Jonathan, I've given our audience a little overview on you. Why don't you take a moment and just kind of tell us who you are and what you love to do?
Absolutely. Well, on my blog, of course, I have two blogs, but on my main personal blog, which is my name, jonathanmilligan.com, I have a simple tagline. I'm a blogger who helps people. That is what I love to do more than anything. In fact, when I first got out of college, I was a high school teacher and a basketball coach. Both my parents were educators, and so I've always had in me the desire to mentor and to teach. And that's why I love what I get to do today, and that's work from home and blog and teach, inspire, instruct, and guide others.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I met Jonathan a few years ago, actually, through Kevin Miller's business, the Free Agent Academy, who I've had Kevin on the show. And also through Platform University, I've seen Jonathan's name come up. And then when he launched his course, Blogging Your Passion, I was just like, yes, finally a course that I can dive into. And it's a really incredible course. And I've really enjoyed being a part of that community. So let's kind of jump right into this, Jonathan. And I like to start off the show with something to inspire people to get outdoors, whether that be a nature quote, whether it's a photograph that you have or a picture that you have in your house or a mantra, but something that you can share with the Some More Outdoor listeners that you use in your life to help inspire them to get outdoors more.
Yeah, well, Brett, mine is a mantra, and it is one that my kids hear from me about every 90 days. And it's, kids, it's time for a no technology getaway. And in the day and age where we live in, our kids are constantly attached to their iPods, their iPhones, iPad, and they're constantly getting way too much screen time for their eyes, and they're losing the ability to think, to dream, to invent, which is much of what you can do when you're outdoors. And so we get away. I try to get the kids away with my wife, of course, and we'll go camping for a weekend. We'll not take any technology, no computers, even our phones. Just my wife and I have our phone, and we hardly try to use it at all. And we just purely get away and invest in relationships and being outdoors.
I love that mantra too. It's time for a no technology getaway. You know, I think in today's day and age, like you said, there's just so much information coming through in our homes with the cell phones and everybody being so attached to their electrical device and stuck in their, what I like to say, their electrical paradise. They don't get to experience what it's like, the environment that we had when we were growing up. Which, you know, I take for granted sometimes, but I was out walking my dog a few weeks ago, and as I was going, I saw a family that was riding their bike, and, you know, one of the young kids was in like a little carrier behind the mom's bike, and, you know, there's windows on the thing, but he's playing his little game. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, thinking about that when we were kids and used to travel, we used to look out the window and see what was around us rather than being so focused on there. So it's time for a no technology getaway. Definitely a mantra that everybody should live by, breaking away every once in a while from your electrical paradise.
Absolutely.
So, Jonathan, this show is all about getting outdoors. It's about helping remind people to live with that childlike wonder, which you're doing with your kids, you know, in this no technology getaway, just helping them live with that childlike wonder again. So I want to take a moment to help remind people about a moment in time in their childhood about being outdoors. Can you tell a story from your childhood about your experience with the outdoors and really take us to that time in your life and share with us that story? I'm sure there's probably a ton of stories, but one that you remember that had the most impact.
Okay, so I had the fortunate opportunity to actually grow up on a campground. It was actually a summer camp. There was probably about 60 acres of paradise that me, being the oldest of three boys, we had the opportunity to explore. And it was in the rolling hills of southern Indiana. We also had on that campground 7 horses and lots of woods to play in. And I remember a particular time when I told my brothers, I was probably about maybe 11 or 12, and they were probably 9 and 8, that let's go and build a fort in the woods. And by in the woods, I meant over there by where the horses were, because they obviously were in a fenced area, but they had a lot of acreage to roam. And so we went and we found the perfect location. It was just down from a hill. It had a little creek along it, and there were these trees that were lined up just perfectly for us to kind of construct and build our fort. The coolest thing was at the top of the hill, the little cliff, the little hill there, was a certain kind of tree that produced these long, I would call them, I don't know, what did you swing from? I don't know if you want to call them vines or what, but really strong vines that you could actually swing from. So we would swing from the top of the cliff right into the middle of the fort. And so we had to build this thing to keep the horses out. So we just we're like scavengers, just going through the woods, finding just the right thing. We had a little bit of tools to construct this fort, and we wanted to make sure that we constructed in a way that the horses couldn't get into the fort, because we had a cooler there that we had taken some Little Debbie's. That was our survival food. And we must have spent the entire spring, summer, and fall working on that fort. And I remember one time the following spring, we had spent the whole winter not going out there. We decided to go check it out. So we went out there, and sure enough, we opened up the cooler, and there was still some Little Debbie's in there. We didn't eat them, though, but we had successfully kept the horses out. And I just have good memories as a kid of getting outdoors and roaming around. My mom was always great at pushing us away from the video games, even though back then we only really had Atari and Nintendo was coming onto the scene. But she still would push us outside and tell us to go do something. And we had to use our creativity, our imagination. We would make up games. We would go on adventures. And I think it has a lot to do with me today at contributing to my creativity, just having those memories of being outdoors.
What a great story. And I did not know that, after all these years that I've known you, did not know that you grew up on a summer camp or on a campground. And so what an experience.
Yeah,
Just to be
absolutely.
able to do that. Now, obviously, not a lot of people have had that experience, but there are people like my parents. We grew up on 10 acres and just had land and just areas to play and dream.
Mm.
And it may not be that for the listeners out there, it may not be something that you actually had, and some of us have been fortunate to grow up on a piece of land like Jonathan and I have grown up on. But think back to those memories at your grandparents' house or at a friend's house where you could just be and have fun and just there was nothing to worry about. Kind of like what you're worrying about today on your way to work or just what's going on in your life. It's a time for the outdoors is a great place for you to be creative and to think and just to kind of unplug. So find a place where you can go to that you can just kind of get that mental junk out of your head and think about those times from your childhood and stir up those memories so you can start living with that childlike wonder again. Tell me about a time that you visited one of the most beautiful places that you had ever been to, and take us to that time and really tell us how it made you feel. What the experience was like in that place.
Well, it's probably about 6 years ago, Brett. I have grandparents. My grandfather has since passed away, but I had my grandmother still alive, and he had a dream. He was a business owner all of his life. He spent most of his time in building successful hardware stores throughout Indiana. And one of his dreams and passions was to go out west, find some land on a mountain, and build a log cabin. And he did this, Brett, when he was in his 70s. And he went out, found his spot. They literally brought the pieces of the log cabin, piece by piece, that they had to put together. And I remember, I vividly can still picture in my mind my grandfather hanging 30 feet in the air on the roof and swinging a hammer away at his dream of being in this log cabin in the mountains where he wanted to be. And he's since been buried where he's actually facing that mountain where he wanted to build this log cabin. But my grandmother still owns the cabin today. And about 6 years ago, we got a chance to actually go out there and spend time out there. It was my first time being out there. It's actually just outside of Lava Hot Springs, Idaho. And it's around 7,000 feet elevation, the plot of land that they picked. And I just remember going out there. It was a time, this was actually before I started blogging, and it was a time in my life where I was still trying to evaluate, where is it that I can contribute the most in this world? And, I want to make an impact and I want to help others. I don't want to just live for selfish gain. And, I was wrestling through those questions, those big questions of finding that meaningful work. And during that time and during that process, it was so rewarding for me to be able to be outdoors, to spend my time away, to be in a new environment, to see the beauty of God's creation. I mean, from a guy who's living in Florida where it's hard to find any hills. Being in that mountain space, I remember we also got a chance to go over to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And it was the first time I saw with my very own eyes the Tetons. And it was incredible. And it's just one of those things. It's breathtaking. It's inspiring. And since then, we can get into this a little bit more as we go through this, the rest of this interview. But since then, I've made this an essential part of a book I'm writing called The Gift: What You Have That the Richest Man Can't Buy. And it's a business fable, Brett, that I'm writing that I want to use to help people discover what it is that's their gift. What is it, that thing that God's given them that they can use to serve and bless other people? And so the character takes a trip to Idaho and gets outdoors because it's an important element in his pursuit of finding purpose and meaning with his work. So that experience going out there out west for me was incredibly energizing, inspiring, and something I'll never forget.
And those times in our lives when we have something like that is just so incredible. And to be able to have that image in your mind of your grandfather building a place where he wanted to eventually be buried, and to be able to have the experience also to go out there living in Florida, where you're right, there is no hills. It's flat out there. But to be able to experience that and experience the Tetons and experience the Rockies, what an amazing, it's an amazing story, and I love it because of what it's done for you in your life. And you had mentioned your book, The Gift, and I know I've read somewhere, I saw like the first chapter or something. I don't know if you put that on one of the communities, but talking about the guy and how he's sitting in a park just to kind of think. And it was interesting to me that you wrote that because of the relationship that I have with the outdoors and the relationship that a lot of people do have with the outdoors to get out and think and use it for that purpose, or maybe not even use it for that purpose, but do it because of the way that it makes them feel when they don't realize how it's making them feel, or, that it's nature that's doing that, I guess you would say.
Right. Yeah.
The nature effect. It's something that I've come up with, just simple, it's like as Derek Halpern says, my superpower solution. It's what nature does to us when we're out there, how nature has an effect on you. How has the nature effect had an impact in your business and your life today?
Well, about, I would say 2 to 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, I live in a subdivision, but the unique thing about the plot of land where I live is I have protected woods on the left side of me, and all in my backyard. And then I do have a lake. So that is, spending time in my backyard is one of my most favorite things to do. But beyond that, specifically how it's made an impact in me is I, for a long time, have taken a morning walk outside. And the first few years I started doing that, the last half of our subdivision was paved and had cul-de-sacs, but there were no homes built. Now, that since has changed. It's like completely full over the course of the last 4 years. But I can't tell you how much I look forward to that walk in the back of my neighborhood. And each of these cul-de-sacs would have ponds. And in the morning, you could see the mist rising from the pond, and the sun was coming just over the trees in the morning. And it's like I was back there with just me, my thoughts, God. And I can't tell you how many ideas, how many moments of inspiration I had. There'd be times where I would just go out there and I would sit by one of those lakes just to think. And I look forward to those times. I used to call it my morning walkabout because it was something that was important to me. And it is kind of a bummer today that there's houses all back there. It's just not the same. But I am thankful I still have my backyard. It's a little oasis for me, even being just outside of a major city.
Now, I've seen pictures of it just through your videos, through your training videos. So behind your house is a lake or a pond, or kind of both, I guess.
It's a pond, but I think it's a pretty big size. It's probably one of the bigger ponds in this neighborhood. But I would probably call it a pond. And
then you had mentioned that there's protective woods. Is that still there, or did they take that down?
Absolutely, they can't. There? Yeah, it's actually
it's protected.
Yeah, they can't. They can't build a house there. So that's all on the left side of my house and all on the back side of my house, all the way to the lake. And then the lake, of course, I keep calling it a lake, but a pond on the other side of the pond is where you can see some homes. But the backyard feels very much like a protected environment for me. And I love to spend time back there.
Okay. And so this is kind of off the interview flow, but the question I want to have is, like, when you guys thought about buying that place, what was when you saw it, what was that feeling that was going through you when you were buying it? Because knowing now that you grew up on a summer camp or on a campground, was that environment, was that piece of property that you have today part of, I guess I don't even know how to ask this question.
No, I think you're bringing up an important point. When we first saw this house, and of course we liked the house on the inside, but there was two powerful things that really just captured my attention beyond other houses that we were looking at the time. One was the house, of course, it was brand new built. No one had lived in it. We didn't have it built. It was already built. But I remember looking through the front window and being able to see completely through the house to the back window and seeing the lake back there. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then it's a two-story house. And on the back side of the house, both my kids have their bedroom on the back side. In particular, I remember standing in my son's bedroom and looking out his window, and all you could see was, from a higher perspective, you could see the lake and on the right and the trees on the left. And honestly, I'm still jealous today. In fact, my son, I just had this conversation with him 2 days ago about switching, because my home office is also on the second floor, but I am more towards the street side. And so I've told him, you want to switch rooms? Let's do it. And he's like, yeah, I want to do it. And I said, are you sure? Because I would love to be able to sit back there and do my writing, to be able to look out the big window to the lake and the forest and the trees. That to me would be, of course, that's the room I'm calling when the kids grow up and move out.
Well, I'm surprised that he's actually willing to give it up. After
Well, I think honestly it's because I also, right next to the home office I'm in, right next to it is my exercise room, and I think his idea is he can knock down the wall and create this big man cave. That's what he says he wants. He's 10 years old and he wants a man cave. So
well, hey, we all need our man caves. Now, you talked about when you going for your morning walkabout and the inspiration. And part of what I like to share with our audience is what we're inspired to do, or what we're inspired to create, and how the outdoors can give us inspiration and help us be focused and just help us be more creative. And so what was one idea, because I'm sure you said you had a ton of ideas, but what's one idea that you did have that was inspired from your time on your morning walkabout?
yeah, I think if I had one main idea, I mean, I've had a lot, but it's a little bit what I've alluded to earlier, and that was the framework and the need to move forward with that story, The Gift. And I think there's a lot of people who get bored with career books. You go into Barnes and Nobles and there's no shortage of books on resumes and interviewing and negotiating salaries. But beyond that, what is work that is going to energize you? What is work that is going to, deeply connect to your gift? And I believe every one of us have that gift. And no matter what environment you're in, you're going to lean towards that gift. And so I would say that much of what's in that book was inspired from pieces of doing those morning walkabouts and constantly adding to this book idea.
John, your book, The Gift, when is it coming out? Do you have a projected date that people can get a hold of this?
Well, right now, I've got about 10 chapters into it that I'm writing. And I've been working towards writing and just self-publishing it. But since I've kind of started talking a little bit more about it, I've had a couple of potential publishers talking to me about the idea. And I'm wrestling with it because, the pure traditional route, sometimes from the point of the finished manuscript to it actually ends up to where you can purchase the book, can be 12 to 18 months. And I want to get my message out there sooner. So I'm wrestling with what to do. So I'm actually right in the middle of that. I'm continuing to write my story because I think I don't want to slow down in that respect. But I've got to make a decision probably in the next month or two whether I want to have this be a traditionally published book, which means that you can walk into Barnes and Nobles and purchase it, or whether it's self-published, meaning you can get a physical copy or a Kindle copy, but it's primarily going to come through me and my blog. So I've got to make that decision. Once I do, I'll be able to have a better date.
Well, and I know that just kind of came off my head, but I'm excited about it because of what I love and how, your writing style and how you've incorporated this whole idea of getting outdoors in your book, so I'm really excited for that. So that's kind of why I was just wondering when it was coming out so people can get a hold of this. So awesome. So the last of the questions are we've talked about your story. We've talked about you sharing, different things that have happened in your life. Now I kind of want to go into focus on some things that will help people understand the impact that the lack of an outdoors is having in their life and how they can incorporate it into their life more. So I have a few questions that I kind of just want to talk to you about and ask you in the next following questions. So what do you do when you do get outdoors?
Well, there's a lot. For me, that walkabout I talked about is highly spiritual. It's an opportunity to pray and to think and to dream. So I think it draws that out of me. It also is, it's very much physical activity. I like to get my kids out, and we'll go bike riding. We'll play wiffle ball in the backyard. We'll kick around a soccer ball. So I think that's important, again, to get them away from that screen time, because that can have a tendency to be all that they do. So for me, it incorporates a lot of different things, from business thinking, planning, strategizing, to spiritual side of me, to actually relational time, which is, I enjoy watching a good movie with my family, but there's just something about making those moments together when it's just you making up a game and playing with your kids. So those are the things that are important to me.
Well, and you mentioned something about the relational aspect of it. You do a lot of different things to bring the outdoors into your life. But I was recently talking to an author, and she had said that there are times in her relationship where, they're on as, I forget the guy's name, but the Love and Respect author. Mm-hmm. And he talks about the crazy cycle, and she was saying how, I was taking it as the crazy cycle, but she was saying whenever there's a disagreement in their marriage, or they're struggling with something where they're butting heads, they'll go out into the forest or something. They live near forest, so they go out into the forest and walk and talk.
It's a great idea.
To help alleviate any of the stresses in their lives, and it's very relaxing. So now, when you don't spend time outdoors, what negative effects do you see in your life and your business?
Yeah, I think it affects our emotions without us realizing it, because we can become so, stationary. I have a home office that I work in, but it's not where I spend all my time. I try to, especially in the mornings, because it works out well. I like being out on the back porch, or in the evenings. I mean, I'll take my laptop out there and I'll work from there. I will get away and go to different places. There's times where I've gone to a park to spend some time or my day. So for me, I think when you begin to start feeling the effects emotionally, and you start feeling down or discouraged, it probably is a good indicator that you need to change your environment. And changing your environment is going to change your perspective. And I know that's what it's done for me.
How do you make sure that it's one of the most important things that you do in your life?
I like to work, and this is kind of another element of it. I do like to work in focus sessions. And so by working in focus sessions, typically for me, they're like 60 minutes. And I'll use a website called focusatwill.com. And it's got a timer on there. And so I'll work for 60 minutes. And then it's important for me to get up and get moving. So being somebody who makes his living on the computer, I don't want to spend 8-10 hours a day sitting in front of my computer indoors. And so I have kind of this list of ideas for me to do for a break. And so typically I'll take anywhere between a 15 and 30-minute break. And sometimes that's getting out and walking the dog in the middle of the afternoon, because, it's an opportunity for me just to get out and walk the dog down the neighborhood. Sometimes it's me taking a good book and going and sitting in the backyard, or I have a front porch swing. I'll spend time out there for a break as well. So that is how my days look, and that's why it's important for me.
So, Jonathan, what's the best advice that you have for someone who wants to get out more, but struggles with the limited amount of time that they have. They may be working 50 to 60 hours a week. They may be commuting an hour each way to work. What kind of advice do you have for those individuals?
Well, I used to work actually in corporate America, and I worked downtown. And I think most of us use that. I know I did at one point, use that excuse that we can't go outside, or we can't get at a place where we can think, or we can't break away from work because we work downtown and we work in a high rise and we work in a building, and people are expecting us to return their phone calls and their emails and be available all the time. And what I found is we have more time than we think. And we have a lunch break that we can certainly use to go outside. Most of us are allowed to have a restroom break or some type of break or a couple breaks during the day, and we should use that to our advantage. Why not get outside? Why not walk? And so for those who say, this isn't going to work for me because I'm in corporate America, or, I don't have the opportunity to work from home and just walk outside whenever I want or work outside when I want, or I don't have the environment that's as inspiring as mountains or, some woods, I would say still get outdoors. And there's something about the fresh air and taking in the outdoors that can be extremely helpful and re-energizing.
Well, and you make a lot of great points there. And, I came up with this question because when I was originally doing a survey, what challenges people have with getting outdoors, a lot of people said that the lack of time that they have, and we're so busy that we can't even make time to rest these days. And so I don't know if that's, an actual excuse, but, getting out, like you said, for a lunch break, taking, if you get, I know in California, we get lunch breaks, 15-minute breaks, we get these different breaks, but we don't take the time to do that. And one of the things that you had said in there was, maybe we don't live by a forest. Maybe we don't live by, have a lake in the backyard, or like I do, 9 redwood trees in the backyard. And I don't always encourage this, but I love every once in a while, when I can't get up to the mountains, or when I just want to lay and watch something, I'll turn on Netflix and I'll go to Ken Burns' the National Parks America's Best Idea. I don't advocate watching a lot of TV, but I love watching that just because it talks about the national parks and it shows the pictures. And I think that's, a big reason why a lot of us keep photos of the outdoors in our home, because of that visual stimulation as well. So like I said, I know it was off topic, but you can just, Jonathan gave some great pointers on how you can get outdoors, even with the limited time that you do have.
Yeah, and you actually just jogged my memory with something. Downstairs, when you first enter our home, we've got a saying that we've kind of adopted from a book that I read a few years ago by Mark Batterson. And in it, he made the statement, accumulate experiences, not possessions. And underneath that saying, we have pictures of all the different places that we've been as a family, from our Idaho trip to the time we went to Michigan in the snow, to beautiful places and beaches that we've been in Florida, to the hills of Tennessee, the different places we've been. And it's a constant reminder to us that when you get to the end of our lives, it's not going to be much about the possessions, but you're going to be surrounded by the people that mean the most to you. And what you will treasure more than anything are those memories, those moments of being with people that you made memories, and you went places and you visited places and you experienced things instead of just the possessions you accumulated.
Well, and I love that. And what book was that out of, the Mark Batterson book?
I believe, because I've read so many of his, but if I remember correctly, I think it is The Lion in a Pit on a Snowy Day.
Gotcha.
I'm
okay.
pretty sure it's in that one.
I have that one, and great book. And so I definitely missed that. Accumulate experiences, not possessions. I think that's going to be my new mantra on that. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time, you sharing and inspiring our, my listeners and just helping to really get this message out there. Can you share some final words of encouragement and how S'more Outdoor listeners can connect with you?
Sure. My final words were just get started and find a way that, maybe it's that morning walkabout. It's waking up 15, 20 minutes earlier than you usually do. And instead of rushing through your busy day, why don't we wake up a little bit earlier and just start by walking and being outdoors? And the ideas that will come to you will probably shock and surprise you in the solutions that you get as well. And then as far as how the readers or the listeners can connect with me, there's two primary places. There's jonathanmilligan.com. And actually, if you want to get some of the sample chapters to the book, The Gift, you can get that at jonathanmilligan.com/thegift. And I believe it's 4 to 6 chapters that you can begin reading the book, at least now, to kind of get an idea of the story of it. And then the other place is bloggingyourpassion.com, where I help people, similar to what Brett's doing, take a passion that they have, a message that they want to get out, and give them the tools and the pathway and the plan to make that possible. And so that's what we do over at bloggingyourpassion.com.
Jonathan, thank you for your time. Thank you for the experiences. And what I love about, and I'm a huge outdoor advocate, but I just love talking to people like yourself who inspire me to make sure that I'm not sitting behind the microphone all day long talking to other people, but getting out there and taking that time to really, enhance our emotional, our mental, our physical, and our spiritual well-being so that we can live with that childlike wonder again like we used to. Thanks again, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks, Brett, for having me. I enjoyed it.
That's it for today's episode of S'more Outdoor. So I'm just excited to be here with you guys today to share the stories and outdoor experiences from people like Jonathan. A few things before we go. You can head on over to s'moreoutdoor.com to see a full recap of Jonathan's show on his show notes page, along with the ways that you can connect with him. There's also that link over there for his free book right now on Amazon, 15 Successful Traits of Pro Bloggers. Go get that, man. It's free until February 9th. So it's from today, February 4th, till February 9th. It's going to be free. If you enjoyed this show as much as I did, we would love it if you just go ahead and leave a comment on his page where he and I will respond. And to stay updated with new episodes, man, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating and review. What that does is it helps get the show noticed so that others like you and I can learn about how the nature effect can have an impact in their lives and so that they can become inspired by these stories as well. While you're over there on the website, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. That way you don't miss out on any exclusive content that I send out. Because some things I won't be talking about here. I'll be sending it out in my newsletter. So I hope Jonathan's story has inspired you to reconnect with nature and start living with childlike wonder again. Thank you for tuning in to the show that's changing lives around the world. Until next time, I challenge you to do something this week to get S'more Outdoor.